Welcome, my name is Matt Rose, Chief Architect at Bionic, and this is Bionic Uncensored. The topic today, as you can see on the top of the board, is a history of application security tools. And the premise for this presentation is really around a lot of conversations I've been having recently. People are asking me, how did we get to this point in terms of the tooling associated with application security? What are the best tools that we can use for a certain use case, a certain problem we're facing? How do I use tooling against a running application, against source code, against APIs, against third-party libraries, so on and so forth? So the common theme is, how did we get to the point where we are? One of the things that I like to do is kind of add some color to these conversations so it's just not boring in terms of the presentation. So there's an analogy, not an analogy, but a quote from a movie. It's a movie you may have heard of. It's an older movie, but it's really not something that is mainstream these days. And if you're, I don't know, over the age of 30, maybe you've heard of the movie, maybe you haven't, but here it is. Airplane 2. Airplane 2 is not a movie that won an Academy Award. It's a campy, kind of funny movie that has a lot of great quotes in it. One of the quotes in the movie that I always come across and always think about when somebody says, how did we get here? How did we start? Is this one.
I want to know absolutely everything that's happened up to now.
Well, let's see. First, the Earth cooled, and then the dinosaurs came. But they got too big and fat, so they all died, and they turned into oil. And
so it's a quote that I use a lot when people are talking to me, and it just comes up, and my friends know it. A lot of my friends from a personal and a professional level know about this quote. So somebody says, how does this start? And I say, well, the dinosaurs came along, but they were too big and fat, and they all died and turned to oil. Well, we're not going to go all the way back to the dinosaurs. We're going to start in right around 2000 and talking about the history of application security tooling. And we're going to talk about some core software-based pieces of technology. There's a ton more from a hardware side, from a network side, but we're going to focus on the application security tooling or the scanning technologies you may be familiar with. So I'm going to write these down right now. I'm going to get rid of our movie poster really quick here. And we're going to talk about these core technologies. So the first one we're going to talk about is SAST, Static Application Security Testing, scanning of the source code. The second one we're going to talk about in terms of its history is DAST, Dynamic Application Security Testing, testing a running application from the outside in. The next one, which complements DAST, is IAST. IAST is Interactive Application Security Testing, and that's doing the same concept as DAST, but from the inside out rather than the outside in. The next one we're going to talk about a little bit in terms of history is RASP. RASP is the modernization of one of those hardware-based pieces of application or technology that I spoke about, which was a web application firewall or WAF. RASP stands for Runtime Application Self-Protection. And then the last one that everybody's probably heard about with the valuations companies that are providing this technology are getting these days is software composition analysis and scanning open source packages for vulnerabilities to make sure that the open source packages you're using as part of your application are secure and have certain licensing requirements, so on and so forth. So these are the core technologies we're really going to talk about. So in terms of a timeline, I'm going to use a different color now. We're going to start around the year 2000 and go all the way down to today, 2021. So really, the application security technologies from a scanning scanning concept really started around 2000. So in 2000, I know we have 2000 there, but I'll just do it. Was when DAST really came out, Dynamic Application Security Testing. The concept of scanning a running application. There's a lot of vendors that were out. It was a hot technology. It still exists today. A lot of people still use DAST or pen testing, as it's often called, as part of their application security program. In 2002, that's where the first software composition analysis vendor came to space. It wasn't called software composition analysis at that point. It was called open source analysis or open source binary analysis, but really the first commercial product for scanning open source packages really came to market in 2002. Well, as a little branch to that, at the same time, also in 2002, that's where the first SAST vendors came to the market. 2002, there was a couple different SAST vendors that came to the market. They were really the first ones that were really looking at application security code. Code is in terms of application security. And it was interesting. I was in the space at this point. I was helping organizations understand that the firewall or the IPS or the IDS wasn't the end-all be-all, that you had to look at the source code, and this is where SAST kind of came to market. In 2006, this is when the industry analysts really started to focus on the application security space and application security scanning technologies. Gartner and other vendors started to put out their reports. You know, you're very familiar with the Magic Quadrant. And at this point, it's kind of interesting. They were very segmented into a specific type of technology. There was a Magic Quadrant for static analysis. There was a Magic Quadrant for dynamic analysis. They were kind of very, very siloed in terms of their technology. And as you all know, they kind of morphed and combined all the technologies into one umbrella, which is application security testing, or the AST Magic Quadrant, which is encompassing all these type of technologies and really focusing on a vendor or a capability, a company that has the capabilities across all the areas. So as time kind of moved on, we really tried to focus on different aspects. So more technologies came out, different ways to do application security testing kind of came out. So from that standpoint, we had in 2011, just going over some more SCA. And then we also had some other technologies coming into play based on the map on the left. 2013, that's when RASP really started to gain some momentum. I mean, there's been some talk about RASP and that type of web application firewall at the code level or the binary insertion level for many years, but this is where the commercial vendors that focused on it really came out. It was kind of the main dish for an organization providing technology rather than a side dish. And then in 2014, this is where IAST really came out, and these two are kind of complementary, and a lot of times vendors will have a RASP solution and an IAST solution because it's based on insertion either into a production environment or into a testing environment based on kind of the needs of that running application. And then in 2015, we had more SCA come to the market, software composition analysis, and this was really when the kind of the floodgates opened for software composition analysis as being the most important aspect of application security. I don't agree with that completely. I think you need to be comprehensive and look at all these technologies because they all find different things. You find different things at runtime. You find different things in uncompiled code. You find different things in third-party libraries or APIs. So you need to be comprehensive in terms of using these technologies at different phases. And then in 2021, I'm at my list, this is where my company Bionic came to the marketplace and really offering a solution that's complementary in a lot of ways and can help with a lot of the technologies that we're talking here, but provide a much broader picture of how things interrelate. What is the architectural map? How is drift handled? You know, drift is basically a new concept and a new phrase that people are using a lot associated with how does a change in my application change the approved architecture or the risk kind of landscape for my application security program as a whole. So give you a second to digest. Again, we're starting from 2000 all the way down to 2021. These are not exact numbers. There's a lot of different kind of ebbs and flows and up for interpretation about when things came to market, when the first Gartner report came out, but there's been kind of conversation, and these are kind of a good benchmark to talk about when these technologies came out and when additional complementary technologies came out as well. So with that, I'm going to erase the board here for a second, and we're going to talk about some more concepts. Hopefully you like the presentation, being able to do this. I know it's been very difficult for people to have kind of conversational presentations like you used to before the global pandemic of COVID, but we're doing our best. We're doing our best. So what are the reasons these technologies have kind of evolved over time? What are the reasons that, you know, we had static analysis after dynamic analysis and interactive application security and, you know, runtime applications, self-protection and software composition analysis? Well, it all goes to complement the way that software is being developed. Software used to be very structured, it used to be very linear. This is just a representation. You've probably seen a million of these graphics associated with a software development lifecycle. It really insinuates as a beginning and an end where it was very structured, it was very plodding in terms of the implementation. People would release every quarter or 3 months or a long time, and now people are releasing software, you know, hundreds, if not tens, hundreds of times a day. So the transition to a lot of these technologies is based off of a DevOps process. DevOps is an infinity loop. It's a bow tie. It's continual. And everybody's seen the, you know, the DevOps infinity loop or bow tie. And I always like to say, where's left? Where's the beginning? Where's the end? Application security is really just a living, breathing thing. It's basically something is happening at every one of these stages. As you can see throughout the loop, we're constantly moving. We're constantly moving. Something in a modern DevOps program is happening at every one of these stages. It's not like one stage needs to depend on the next one. They all build off each other because that's the way we can release software very, very quickly in a microservices architecture. And it's really a living, breathing thing, as I mentioned before. One of the analogies that I used to give associated with applications was that it was a virus. It was a living, breathing, evolving virus. But that's really a terrible analogy today. I'm really sorry I brought it up. I used to use it, and I'm like, got to stop using that. So, you know, I thought about what would be a good another analogy for application development, software development as a whole. Well, I thought about software development is a train going 1,000 miles on the track or 100 miles on the track. 1,000 might be a little bit fast, but it's never stopping. It's in perpetual motion. And it made me think of a movie that also has this same concept, and I don't know if anybody's seen this, Snowpiercer. The concept behind Snowpiercer is the world had ended, and the only people that were still alive in the world were on this perpetual train that had to keep moving in order for society to survive. Well, your applications need to be continually moving so that your software can survive. It can be secure, it can provide the features and functions that you need to your customers, and it basically is something that is constantly in motion. If you haven't seen Snowpiercer, it's a great movie. They actually created a series on it. It's pretty commonplace now that if you have a great movie, then they create a TV show about it too. I'm not sure which streaming service it's on. I think it's Amazon, but I'm not totally sure. So check it out. I mean, the concept is there. It's just good entertainment, so I'll give you my review of the movie. I liked it. See if you guys like it or not. So with that, that's kind of wrapping up this first session. We're going to dig into each of these technologies, SAST, DAST, IAST, RASP, SCA, why they're good, why they're different, how they work together in future episodes of Bionic Uncensored. But that's pretty much the topic today. If you like the conversation, join us again. Again, my name is Matt Rose, Chief Architect at Bionic. Thank you for watching.